To live is to suffer. To survive is to find some meaning in the suffering. The words of hip hop star DMX. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding, guys. This is Friedrich Nietzsche. Friedrich Nietzsche, boys and girls, one of the most misunderstood of all of the German philosophers, and a personal favorite of mine, contrary to what any of you may believe, but any of you who have known me for a while shouldn't be surprised by that at all. A lot of people deliberately misinterpret Nietzsche as a nihilist. And a lot of people project their own nihilism onto Nietzsche and his teachings. But I would submit to you that this quote, in and of itself, should put to rest that misconception that Friedrich Nietzsche was a nihilist. Now, we can have the debate about whether there is meaning in the suffering, meaning to life, meaning inside ourselves or outside of ourselves, if there is some meaning to any of this, to any of it at all. And we can definitely have that discussion and we can have that argument. But something touched on me just a week and a half ago. I was rewatching an old classic film, and as it turned out, Rod Dreher, who you know I'm a big fan of, Bill Wade in particular knows that I'm a big fan of Rod Dreher and his Substack. As it turned out, Rod Dreher and I, as an act of biblical synchronicity, happened to have been watching that film at the same time. So I thought that noteworthy, and I thought that something worth reflecting on and making it a part of the opening, sharing it with the congregation, sharing it with the audience. And that film in question was this film from the 1970s called My Dinner with Andre. Now, the premise of My Dinner with Andre, it plays more like a long one-act morality play than it does an actual Hollywood film production. It's set in one room across one dinner table, and it depicts one conversation between two New York City playwrights, Wally on the left and Andre on the right. And the entire New York City theater community thinks that Andre has gone insane because he's seeking all these different mystical experiences. He's traveling to Tibet. He's traveling to all these holy sites. He's looking for a larger reality outside of himself. Now, Wally on the left is not a nihilist by any stretch of the imagination. He believes that there is a meaning to life, but he doesn't believe that that meaning has to be sought from anything outside of ourselves. Now, that is a debate worth having. But in light of what modern culture tells us and this nihilism that is being pushed by the cultural zeitgeist, by those sinister forces that control the switchboard, that control the perception and therefore control the reality, that push for nihilism is omnipresent. That push for nihilism is sometimes overwhelming. And that push for nihilism is most certainly deliberate. Because if you hold that life has no meaning, then you can put whatever agenda in front of a culture and push that agenda based on a meaning that you assign it. Because at our core, we are genetically predestined to seek meaning. It is something that is unique to the human condition and definitely present in the human condition. But let's reflect on past versus present. I'll give you an example of how we affect culture and culture affects us in our search for meaning outside of ourselves. This is Agostino Fasolato's Fall of the Rebel Angels. Now, I want you to get a good look at the detail of this, and if your eyes are failing you, Google a larger and more detailed picture of it. This intricate work of art was inspired by something outside of that sculptor. In his reach for a deeper meaning, he saw something outside of himself, and this incredibly intricate piece of art was hewn by one set of inspired hands out of one block of marble. That's right, one block of marble. This was sculpted out of by one set of divine hands, and it was done in the 1500s. The meaning outside of Fasolato, the meaning that he sought outside himself, inspired him to create this work of art. And this work of art, in turn, has inspired how many untold thousands of people to seek a higher meaning to life whether inside or outside of themselves, that there is a meaning. This piece of art, Giovanni Straza's Veiled Virgin, again, one inspired set of hands, inspired by what he felt was a higher meaning to life outside of himself. Examine the detail of that. One set of inspired hands hewing this magnificent piece. Look at the detail of the veil. This was all sculpted out of one single block of marble. This one in the 1800s. One inspired set of hands, inspired by a greater meaning, has provided this work of art that has inspired how many countless thousands to seek higher meaning to their own lives inside or outside of themselves. This is what a sense of meaning, purpose, beauty, and truth can inspire in the greatest moments of human nature. This is what we are capable of, and this is what we can reflect. But is it any wonder that when this is what hangs and is displayed in our modern art galleries omnipresently, that this would be reflective of this bankrupt, nihilistic culture that has created it and that it has in turn created? Outside of the obvious vaginal overtones, is there anything that is inspiring about this? Anything that would move one to find a higher purpose or a higher meaning, or let alone one outside of themselves? And these abstract masterpieces that reside in the sculpture gardens of metropolitan areas all over the world, what about any of this inspires a sense of greater purpose, a sense of meaning? A sense that we should be seeking a higher truth and a higher light. And I would be remiss if I didn't take the easy jab at the artist I most love to hate. I'm talking about Robert Rauschenberg with this alleged masterpiece. People pay millions of dollars for this. This is considered high art. This is considered high art and could be considered high art in a culture that is completely bankrupt of any sense of beauty, truth, or higher meaning outside oneself. And it's not restricted to art, but architecture. Every one of these cathedrals, and this is just a single isolated and not even the greatest example of these architectural masterpieces that were created centuries ago, inspired by a sense of meaning, of purpose, of beauty and truth outside ourselves. This is what culture and humanity is capable of when so inspired. And we can contrast that with whatever the hell this thing is in Denmark. You know, a famous man once said that politics is downstream of culture. If the zeitgeist and those sinister forces at the switch pushing that sense of nihilism have created this culturally, is it any wonder that the politics downstream of that culture would reflect a nihilistic attitude, not just here in the States, but worldwide? It's almost as if, by design, they were trying to create the illusion that we have no hope of changing our situation. Now, this is by design, and we all know it, to create that sense of nihilism, to create that lackadaisical nature in us all, that divine Eeyore. Why vote? Why act? Probably just fall off again anyway. And it is working. But as Viktor Frankl reminds us, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. This sinister machination of those at the switchboard may wind up shooting themselves in the foot. because many among us, countless thousands among us, are finding ourselves unable to change our situation, so we are changing ourselves. And just as the sculptor's hands create a piece of art that affects the culture affects the sculptor's hands, just as when we change ourselves, we change the culture. And politics being downstream from culture, we wind up changing the politics. The very thing that those sinister elements at the switchboard intended to remove all hope has renewed our hope and renewed our efforts. Now, I'm not going to give you any naive assertions that the herd will ever change our behavior. But the herd isn't what we're counting on. It is the individuals who are changing ourselves, who are changing the culture, and will ultimately, if we stay the course and rise in strength, will change the politics and will, in fact, change the world. We are compelled to change ourselves, and therefore we are compelled to change the world. It is my assertion and my firmly held belief that we are compelled, by all means, spiritual or otherwise, to rise to this calling and to move forward to face it, unbowed, unbroken, and unafraid. Chin down, knuckles up. We move forward and we win this thing. Nothing in our lives and nothing in our history will ever be more important. The opinions expressed by the Reverend are his own and no one else's on the planet. Not friends, not foes, not supporters, not detractors, not sponsors, and I cannot stress this enough, certainly not employers, for the sake of you docs, happy Antifa maggots out there. They are coming from the heart. They are guided by the mind. They have been adjudicated thought crime in all jurisdictions. Consider yourself warned, and they are guaranteed to stretch open that unwilling maw and choke you, if necessary, to death with a healthy dose of truth cock. Welcome back, boys and girls. It is time once again for the Sunday sermon. Glad you made it. Take 2 in the books. Hopefully, when I do the roll call, we're not max headroom again. In the meantime, between time, everybody in for the drum roll. Let's see where the fire is. Coming hard, charging out of the starting gate, as we always do. The bumper music, the gut-stomping rock and roll band, Red Desert, from the smoldering embers and crumbling ruins of the once great American city of Minneapolis, Minnesota. The name of the band is Red Desert. The name of the track is Older, No Wiser. Every week I get a little bit older. Every week you guys get to decide if I've gotten any wiser. Some weeks I do better than others. I'm going to bounce back over here and see who made it back for take 2. Hopefully the guys are not waiting around on take number 1. Hopefully everybody's going to get over here. I know that Roman and Carrie are here, and some of you guys are going to trickle in as soon as you figure out that I'm doing take number 2. Again, technical difficulties, man. It's just me and a desktop. The lovely Miss Charlie checking in from upstairs. I've got some more information on our coming together here under one roof. A lot of magnificent things going on, man. Just a lot of good news. A lot of good news on all fronts. This is going to be one of those good mood weeks, man. I promise. Deacon Mark on the porch. Ida, I saw you out there earlier. You guys hopefully sipping some adult sodas and enjoying a fine cigar, or perhaps a cigarette for those of us who are, us low-life smoking deplorables. I'm getting better about that. I'm down to about 2 a day, and I don't mean 2 lighters a day like it used to be. I'm down to about 2 cigarettes a day, and they are going the way of the dinosaur very, very soon. Brother Joel on board. Jake, glad you made it back, brother. There's Carrie, and there is Roman. Fantastic. What is that? Vegan Still better than a Hunter Biden painting. Yes, sir, Mr. Greg. And I'm glad you made it. Yeah, Rauschenberg is still better than Hunter Biden, man. I think you do make an excellent point. Hard to refute that. It does give pseudo-intellectuals something to ponder in search of an explanation of the real meaning of those ghastly avatars. Yes, indeed it does. And that is courtesy of Joey, the Sultan of Sarcasm. I hope that you are having a good time, brother. And, of course, the Mighty Mighty Stone. Megan and Sonny joining us tonight. God bless y'all, man. Um, I was really, dude. I felt like the original opening was better, and I felt like that might have been the best hymn opening I've ever done. But we had some sound problems. I got that max headroom thing going on, so I figured we just go ahead and redo the whole thing. And we've got some new faces on. Phil Lewis joined us from Tyler, Texas. We got David on board. I might have missed some of you guys in the original. I might have missed some of you guys in the original roll call, but it's cool. We're going to be doing things a little different today. First of all, it's going to be running just a shade short, not because I'm paying attention to time constraints for their own sake, but because there was a really, really fantastic sermon from one of our guest pastors there at On Fire Ministries. You guys know that is my home church. And I should, as part of the disclaimer, point out that the opinions of the Reverend are in no way reflective of the opinions of On Fire Ministries or anyone that works there. That's just my home church. They don't endorse me. I don't endorse them for purposes of anything that might emanate or jump out of my angry face, okay? So don't go hitting up Pastor Shea with, hey, man, that Reverend Bart guy, you should hear what he's talking. Because Pastor Shea wasn't even there today, for starters. But the guest pastor, man, he did a really fantastic sermon this morning. I was really moved very, very deeply. And he said that part 2 of that is going to come in the Encounters sermon session tonight at 6:30. That's going to be 6:30 my time. And I want to make sure that I'm going to be there. But I wasn't just going to abandon you guys because we've already had enough stutter steps, man, and we had enough good things that we wanted to get on. And I'm doing things in reverse order this week. Ordinarily, right? Isn't it, though, Jay? Isn't that how anybody could have an eye for details like that and the meticulousness to get in and carve all those little neat? It's incredible. But these people felt inspired by God, right? That light of truth, that truth and beauty, man. You know, Clavin's always on about that, if you follow Andrew Clavin at all. But the beauty and truth and the truth and beauty, man. Those inspired works, people that are looking at something higher than themselves, people looking at something that's outside themselves to inspire them to a greater sense of meaning, man. And as we both know, brother, you and I both know, nothing is impossible for the boss man. Nothing's impossible for the boss man through the carpenter. Nothing. And we can see the difference, not just in art, but in architecture and in culture and in functioning civilizations, when they are inspired by a greater purpose and when they are not. And I think anybody who can't see that is either deluded, a liar, or functionally retarded. I know we're not supposed to say the R word anymore, but that's where it's at. Anyway, Older No Wiser from Red Desert. That is the bumper music. We're going to jump right into this thing, Poison Squirrels. This is going to be good. We're going to be doing it in reverse order because the rabbit hole, man. When I was doing show prep, I went into this rabbit hole. It's something that Ryan and I talked about last week, and it is a rabbit hole and worth going down. But I went so far down and just started feeling like just seized to really, really take on this, and it really more or less requires a sermon of its own. So what we're going to do is we're going to touch on the bullet points first, and we're going to end the show with the rabbit hole, because the rabbit hole runs deep and it's something very close to my heart and should be very close to yours as well. So I hope you guys are going to get a lot out of it. Let me get the sponsor shout outs out of the way real quick. First of all, I would be remiss if I did not give thanks and acknowledgement and a humble dose of love to Roman and his lovely wife, Carrie. Roman is one of my oldest and dearest friends. They've been very supportive of me in every life endeavor, and they've been very supportive of the program as well. They are the erotic pinups and portraits people over at opiumtales.com, and you've got Roman and you've got Roxy and Allie and this bevy of beautiful models. He's doing wonderful watercolor work, and he's always been one of the most creative spirits in my circle of friends, man. Whether it's musically, artistically, whatever he's doing, he's off and he's on it, man. And they also have testosterone-driven commentary, and you know how I feel about that. So that's going to be a trifecta. That's going to be a win on all fronts. And you want to check out his book, Roman Riva, From Dork to Pimp Daddy, available on Amazon. You want to check that out. It's about his journey from being just a tech guy, sort of, Joe Scrub, to a dude who gets paid for the privilege of painting beautiful naked women. Yeah, like beautiful women say, hey, I'm going to take off my clothes and you're going to paint portraits of me and we're going to give you money. That's good work if you can get it. And it's been an interesting. Roman Freely, okay, Roman Freely, okay, cool. His art anthology, which is now out, is Roman Freely. So you can pick that up as well. And that is going to be Roman Reva, Roman Freely. Right on. Cool. And that is also available on Amazon. Want to make sure to give him the proper shout out. And Roman actually was the first remote guest that we ever had on when I was doing that gig down in Borger, Texas. And I got to give a shout out to my Viking brothers, Casey and Dusty Tellison. Nordic Smoke Barbecue, the only legit barbecue in the Inland Northwest. Period, end of statement, done. I don't want to hear it. Yeah, but what about sit down, shut up, you're wrong. They're it, okay? When I arrived here in the Northwest, their idea of barbecue was meat with some sauce on it. They didn't understand rubs. They didn't understand smoking. They didn't understand anything. And the cool thing about Dusty and Casey is they were winging it. They had no idea what they were doing when they jumped into the biz. They bought a smoker truck and they said, we're going to do it. And they learned on the fly, and it's phenomenal. And they will be smoking my holiday turkey again this year, which I will be here in Spokane to partake of in all likelihood because of an announcement that I'm going to clear up a little bit later on. But they are out there, and the Viking Longship is sailing the asphalt seas in the Spokane area. Catch up with them. And don't forget to check out Casey's book, Freaks of a Feather. It is a combat memoir that started out as a suicide note. It is a phenomenal piece of literature. You will not regret it. And there are people here in the comments that will tell you just how much you're not going to regret it. Okay, so let's hit those bullet points first, as I promised I would, as I just pulled off my entire sheet of bullet points by hitting the wrong tab on my Google. At some point, I think Charlie is going to be pulled in as a de facto producer. I think we're going to get a proper mixing board and maybe a couple of different cameras once I get things set up on the other side of the wall here. First announcement I want to give, which is a piece of good news. Apparently, the Zuckerberg squad, the censorship squad, was asleep at the switch, and I'm apparently back on Facebook. If one of you guys in the comments could bounce over and check that real quick. Oh, there's Phil. Phil is watching on Facebook, so apparently it's true. Apparently I am back live on Facebook Live on the Reverend Bart's America page. Enjoy it this week. I mean, like, seriously, enjoy it this week because, it'll probably be gone by next week. They're not going to give me like 2 weeks before the election. They're just not going to do it. By the way, Roman, that was absolutely hilarious. Casey's a much better writer than I am, but my book has boobs. That's tremendous. That's great. Chrissy Rodriguez, my sister in Christ, and my conservative sister in Christ, showing up via Facebook. I am glad to know that we are back on Facebook Live. It's a good thing. Expanding the reach of the program a little bit. So I promised you guys some big wins for the good guys, and we're gonna roll through this real quick because I got to tell you, man, the bulk of the program is going to be devoted to the rabbit hole. I just decided I'm going to, because I can do that. It's my show. But I did promise a bit of good news, for the good guys, and I'm talking about the orange man that everybody loves to hate. The New York Court of Appeals. The New York Court of Appeals has reconsidered the appeal. You remember that inordinate. Let me just give you a quick background for those of you who either haven't been paying attention or have been listening to the mainstream media. Denzel's always talking about, you're uninformed or you're misinformed. They hit Donald Trump with a lawsuit alleging that he had hyperinflated the value of his properties in order to secure loans. Well, here's the thing. In order for there to be a crime, there typically has to be a victim, but not in civil cases. The AG, it was completely a political prosecution. Even the Democrats know that, right? They just don't care because it's different when we do it. At the end of the day, all of those loans were paid back with interest, and every single bank that testified said, we would gladly do business with him again. In fact, we would love to do business with him right now, but the state is preventing us from doing so. They assessed a fine of $454 million. Now, keep in mind, you guys remember a little thing called the financial crisis in the 2000s, right? 2007, 2008 banking crisis, Lehman Brothers. Nobody got fines like that. With all that malfeasance, people were hardly fined. And they assessed this against Trump for $454 million, even though there was no victim, even though he paid back the loans with interest. There was nothing. It was a purely political prosecution, and even the Dems know it. The Court of Appeals this week is looking at it, and they're like, dude, this is effed. This is majorly MF'd. And they're taking a look at it, and they are bracing the prosecution, the prosecuting attorneys, in ways that the original trial court would not. It was the obvious questions, but the trial court wasn't asking them. These appellate judges are asking those questions. How the hell can you justify even bringing this case when there is no victim? No one was harmed. The system wasn't harmed. No consumers were harmed. How can you justify bringing this case in the first place? And now that you've gotten this judgment, which how the hell did we come up with the judgment? How do you assess the damages when no one was harmed at $454 million? They're basically calling it what it is. This is a political prosecution, and they're pushing back on it. So either the entire case is going to get dismissed, or the fines are going to be cut substantially, because all of this was an effort to bankrupt the man. Don't do that to a billionaire, and definitely don't do that to Donald Trump, all right? Because he's not like your milquetoast conservatives. He's going to push back, and when he comes out chunking with his, good Lord, beautiful attorney, my goodness, what is it Andrew Klavan calls her? Alina Haba. Alina Haba. My goodness, man, he can pick, and she's dangerous. I sat ringside last night. You guys know that I MC fight shows. I MC'd Rick Little's fight show last night, and I sat at a table next to Juliana Killer Miller, next to Melissa Amaya, another female mixed martial arts fighter of some renown. There were a number, and we have a slew of them up here who are gorgeous, just drop dead beautiful women who will kill you with their bare hands. All right. Alina Haba is the legal equivalent of that. I don't know how, I don't know what her hand skills are, but that woman will chop you to pieces in a courtroom, and she is stone cold gorgeous. While I'm on the subject of good news, the appeals court dismissed outright in Georgia, which is another political trial. And of course, Fani Willis completely fallen apart. And right now, the Georgia prosecuting attorneys, the attorneys general of the state of Georgia, they're in a panic because they know they overreached, and now someone called them on it. And what they're doing now is basically begging not to be sanctioned. So 2 of the charges got dropped. He's now facing 2 more of the charges got dropped, rather. He's now facing 8 charges instead of 13. Criminal conspiracy is still one of those charges, but it's falling apart before it even gets to the appeals process. So everything they have thrown at this man is falling apart, as well it should. And we all knew. Look, man, every one of us here called it. We knew what it was about when it was happening. We called it for what it was. And of course, the Democrat pushed back. Well, it's different when we do it. And no, he's a bad guy, and 31 felony convictions and blah, blah, blah. That trial's going to fall apart on appeal too. That's why they didn't move forward with the prosecution in September when they could have, because they knew if they put Donald Trump in Rikers, you're already handing him the election. Guess what? You handed it to him anyway, Sparky, because you put him on trial for nothing, and it failed. What am I always saying? Fundamentally, people are suckers for what? Come on, guys, in the comments. Fundamentally, people are suckers for what? The truth. And ultimately, the truth will out. But, of course, I'm only saying that because, like my sister in Christ, Miss Christie, we're all just brainwashed cult members and all that. So... but in any case, those are falling apart. And we got one more big win, non-Trump related, out of the state of New York. A federal judge in New York struck down the state ban, that broad-based ban that New York had. It's like, okay, the federal courts forced them to allow more freedom in their concealed carry permits, right? So what does New York do? They're not just going to do anything for the people. They're like, no, we are your betters, and we will tell you what is public safety and what is not. So they said, okay, the feds tell us, and the Supreme Court tells us that we have to allow more leeway in issuing concealed carry permits. That's cool. We'll go ahead and issue the permits because we have to, but we're going to turn around and we're going to make it completely illegal on any private property that you don't have written consent or permission, if it is accessible to the public, if it's private property accessible to the public, or even if it's public property, we are going to say that there will be no carrying of concealed weapons. A federal appeals court in the state of New York struck that down this week, along with two other major gun control law wins that we had. And the Supreme Court, including my Amy, who has been a bitter disappointment to me, by the way, on any number of cases. They gave us a boost back a couple of months ago that you guys may not have noticed, that they are not going to hear the cases at all with regard to quote unquote assault weapons, sporting center fire, modern sporting rifles, whatever you wish. We all know how that goes, and we all know that they're playing games with language. But the high capacity, meaning standard capacity magazines, the Supreme Court basically said, we're not going to hear it. They kicked it back down to the lower court. It will come up to SCOTUS. It will come up after the election. So let's keep our fingers crossed that the election falls on our end, because otherwise all bets are off. And guys, all bets are off in any case right now. I'm not gonna get too much into this. I'm gonna let you guys do your own homework on it. But a number of Democrat representatives and senators are forming a coalition, and they are saying that they are going to refuse to certify the election results if Trump wins, which is a nice way of saying we're going to steal it. And if for some reason we can't steal it, we're going to try to kill him. And if for some reason the assassins fail in killing him, we're just going to refuse to certify the election. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but January the 6th of 2020, allegedly that was the push from the MAGA crowd. And what did they call that? Some I word. Help me out here. Some I word. Infanticide. No, that's a different Democrat policy. Impotence. No, that's Adam Schiff. What am I? Oh yeah, insurrection. That's what they called it. Right. So yeah, they're already swearing ahead of time that they're not going to confirm the results. So guys, all bets are still off, and this could get very, very, very ugly. Okay, so keep your head on a swivel. But remember, guys, as I'm always telling you, no black pills. Chin down, knuckles up. Drive forward with that forehead, man, and come out chunking. Right? There's no guarantees, but ultimately, we win this thing, man. We win this thing. I'm staking my life on it. Like literally, no, really, I'm staking my life on it. But that was an interesting piece of information that came to light over the course of this week. They're really, really pushing for that. And of course, Jamie Raskin is at the heart of it. You guys can do your homework on that. Jamie Raskin, Congress refuses to certify Trump election, whatever. And of course, what it's going to do first is take you back to a whole bunch of January 6th stories, but we already know how that works. So that was some big wins for the good guys. The climate shift in the culture, and this is partially inspired by the opener. Again, the whole reason, and again, the opening was kind of a departure for me. I didn't get into a whole lot of political anything, barely mentioned it. But there is a climate shift going on in the culture right now. There is, what is that? They succeed and refuse to certify. I'll see you fine folks in the gulag. It'll be Jamie Corleone Raskin. Yeah, it'll be a pleasure to share a bunk with you at the gulag, Mike. Just know that I snore, okay? Like, bad. In any case, there is a cultural climate shift going on, and we can all see it. I touched a little bit last week on all of the big name unexpected folks that are coming to the cross, that are coming to the faith. And I made a point of stressing, we don't need their validation. It's not about their validation. It's not about, it's okay to be a Christian because Russell Brand came over, and he's a cool guy, and that means that we're like default cool. That's not it. That's not what this is about. It's not about their celebrity validating our belief system. It's about what they are walking away from, okay? Because what we already know about that, Luciferian would be the first word that comes to mind. And of course, that would be the point where Ryan would normally go, "Hey, man, don't blame the folly of man on the guy that's planting the seeds." And there's a case to be made for that, but we are looking at. I don't even want to mention the D word with regard to the rap star who's currently up against it. It's all falling apart. Any of us who read Hollywood Babylon from Kenneth Anger way back in the day, and if you haven't, I suggest that you do, because this is nothing new. This is nothing new in the entertainment industry. I could also go into who controls the entertainment industry. That's a rant for another day, but you guys already know. Hollywood Babylon, man, I'm telling you, all of it's coming out, and these people who are walking away from it, it's not that we need their validation because now the celebrities are on our side. It's what they are walking away from and what they are walking to. It is not representative. It says nothing about Russell Brand, that we're somehow cool because now we got Russell Brand on our label. It's not. Or Jordan Peterson, or Jordan Peterson's wife, or eventually Joe Rogan, mark my words, or Kat Von D, or any of those high-profile personalities. It's not that they are high-profile personalities. It is what they are known for. Russell Brand was the poster child for Hollywood depravity and degeneracy. I mean, the literal poster child. And he had that moment, and he's like, this ain't going to do. This ain't going to do. Kat Von D, top of her game in the tattoo game. All you ink slingers out here, guys that have a lot of ink, guys like Stone, guys like Jake, any of the other people on here that have a ton of ink, you know what Kat Von D was about. And she was making millions, bro. Top of her game. Had an occult book collection, a collection of occult books, including some first edition Aleister Crowley's. We're talking millions of dollars worth of occult books. And she had that moment where, like, no, this isn't going to work for me. All of those worldly riches that they basically pissed away, right? Brand isn't hurting. He's always going to land on his feet because, he's a pretty MFer, as I'm fond of calling him, right? He's always going to land on his feet. But he walked away from writing his own ticket in Hollywood to chart his own course because he could no longer be behind what he was the poster child for. And it's way worse, man, than you guys can even imagine. Speaking of old movies that I went back and rewatched recently, I gave another viewing to Eyes Wide Shut. Wow. That hit back when they killed Kubrick for it. I said what I said. That one hit when they killed Kubrick for it, and that missing 16 minutes that no one will ever see. But that hits way different now. Now that it's not just me and my tinfoil hat crowd over here in the comments that were way ahead of the curve. Now that even the grazers are shaking off the fence going, something doesn't seem right about this. I don't know, man. Why would a man need 55-gallon drums of lube? And it just, I don't know. Things are a little weird here. And that Justin Bieber thing's a little, Even the mainstream is shaking off now. This is evil, guys. All the stuff that's coming out about the kids, and you guys remember the one scene, the costume guy, right? Remember the costume guy in Eyes Wide Shut, right? And his clearly underage daughter, right? Where one night he's fighting the two Asian guys over doing a little naughty, and the next minute he's basically offering her up as a child sacrifice, sexually speaking. Look, man, this is reality. And it's dark. All of the human trafficking stuff that we can verify. I want you to ponder this for a minute. With all the things that are out there that are declassified now, all the horrible, horrible things that are declassified now, why would we continue to believe that the government isn't doing that and worse? Right. So if we can make that logical leap, like we know for a fact that they deliberately fed radioactive isotope-laced oatmeal to retarded kids and worked with the Quaker Oats Company in the process of that. Look it up. We know that they brought Nazi war criminals over here and put them to work for, aerospace industries. And you can feel about that how you want. But if you know what they're capable of and somebody presents something like, oh yeah, but dude, the whole like being behind human trafficking thing, dude, that's just over the top. No way would they do that. Really interesting. 85,000 missing children that we know of, separated from their families at the border. This is all evil, man. This is evil. There's no way to refer to it but evil. These people that are walking away from it. And here is, you know, the old saying that if you're taking flack, it means you're over the target. Okay. So that takes us to our next bullet point: the climate shift in culture and the cowardice disguised as edginess and servility disguised as resistance. What are the people that bag on, and why is it always the Christian faith? What I have told people to try before, because everybody's like, well, you know, all religions are equally violent. Okay, you want to test that? Here's the experiment. Walk up to a pastor. Don't do it at an Orthodox church. Okay, don't please. Let me preface this. Don't do this at an Orthodox church because it's going to end very badly for you. But for a typical milquetoast, any Christian church that has a BLM flag and a rainbow flag hanging in front of it, behind the altar, in the windows or something, walk up to the preacher at the end of the sermon as he's greeting everybody. Just walk up to him, put your finger in his face and say, F Jesus, F God, right? He's going to back up. A couple of guys are going to gently escort you away. Hey man, move away. And then he's going to say, I'll pray for you. Maybe not in the South. I noticed that Julie's here, so maybe not in the South. But in the milquetoast Christian churches, they're going to pray for you. Now, try that at your local mosque after the imam is finished reciting his poison. Walk up to the imam and say, F Muhammad. I started to say, call me from the emergency room and let me know how that worked out for you, but you're not going to live. They're going to strike you dead. Don't tell me that they're equally violent. Maybe in doctrine, but certainly not in practice. So why? If you're taking flack, you must be over the target. Where does culture make fun of Muslims? We're not even allowed to paint accurate pictures anymore. You guys remember Invasion USA, right? And wow, lo and behold, all of the terrorists in that turned out to be, oh wow, Muslim. And that's just unconscionable now. You can't even have to suggest that any Muslim might be an extremist terrorist is just beyond the pale. To suggest that Christians, each and every one of us, are closet terrorists ready to blow up abortion clinics and shoot abortion doctors for God. And there are those out there, but come on now. You know, exception versus rule. Muhammad cartoons in Texas. Thank you very much. There's another classic example. Right. They did that, and a guy showed up to shoot up the place. But keep in mind what I'm getting at, Roman, and it's a valid point. But you know that there would never be a sitcom, right? Imagine a sitcom or any show on any television network that would have an entire, right. No, you're good, bro. You're good. Don't even worry about it. You don't have to delete that. There would never be a show on any major network that the plot of the sitcom would be, hey man, you know, Kramer, our crazy next door neighbor, is having a draw Muhammad contest, and them having like some witty banter about how he's probably going to get killed. Ha 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 ha. I'm making a big joke out of it. That would never happen, right? They would never say take a factual thing like, oh, what do they do on the Day of Atonement? Yeah, they wave chickens over their heads and torture them and kill them and send the chicken to hell to atone for their sins. I'm oversimplifying here, but we all know who I'm talking about. We all know what holiday I'm talking about. But you can't even say that on a mainstream news show. You couldn't even say it. They'd be screaming you down for being anti-Semitic. You want to make fun of Christians? It's open season. Not only is it open season, but it's encouraged. And again, guys, I'm not doing the crybaby thing. Oh, poor oppressed Christians. You guys know where I stand on that. We're not oppressed, but don't deny that we're targeted. They do it because it's edgy, right? They want to be edgy. Oh, look at me. I'm making fun of the faith. Ben Affleck, right? What was the name of that the movie where Alanis Morissette winds up being God? What was the movie? You guys saw it, right? I mean, just scathing, about Christianity, and then got his panties in a bunch when Bill Maher and Sam Harris made some disparaging comments and by disparaging, I mean factually accurate comments about Islam. This is the thing. He thought he was being edgy. Look at me, I'm so edgy. You'll do that when you're making fun of Christians. You won't do it in Hollywood. Thank you, Dogma. Thank you very much. You won't do it in Hollywood because we know who controls Hollywood. You won't take that risk. South Park, maybe. South Park seems to be the exception to every rule. But South Park wouldn't even take on Muhammad. South Park wouldn't even take on Islam, right? Christians, Mormons, all day long, man. Any Bible-believing faith. Catholics are child molesters. That's almost become a trope about the naughty priest diddling little boys. And you know what? You can make a case for that because a whole lot of priests diddled little boys. We don't walk away from that, okay? As much as some would like to bury their heads in the sand, we're not going to walk away from it. Yes, a lot of Catholic priests did a lot of little boys. We all found it morally reprehensible, and the people that covered up are even more reprehensible. If you're going to walk in the light of truth, then you got to own that truth no matter how nasty it is. That means when Eric Robert Rudolph blows up a few abortion clinics, you got to own that dude. Right? You got to own that dude. That is when the Westboro Baptists, God hates fags guys show up, you got to own that, right? But as I've said before, the real followers, the guys that step up and walk in the light, they acknowledge those guys and they soundly reject them. Soundly reject those dudes straight away because that hate was there. That depravity was there. God didn't put that on them. They adopted that, and they want to, in the case of Westboro, they want to cloak their hate in Scripture. Nah, bro. Just step up and say that one of those Catholic priests diddled you, and rather than own it for the priest, you decided you'd take it out on gay folks. You'd take it out on them instead. You're a twisted unit, bro, and I pray for you. I pray for you. I hope that you find the truth and the light and the salvation, that you make peace with it, that you can find some kind of forgiveness on whatever level it is that will get you through the night. Don't put that on God, bro. Don't put that on God. But what you have, again, in accordance with the bullet point, it's cowardice disguised as edginess. You are afraid. Let's just call it what it is. Well, I don't make fun of Muslims because Muslims aren't as violent as Christians. You're a liar. I don't make fun of Jews because, Jews aren't as like, their doctrine isn't as messed up as Christians. You're a liar. You don't make fun of Jews because you're afraid of being seen as anti-Semitic. You don't make fun of Muslims because you're afraid of being seen as bigoted, or worse, you're afraid of violent reprisals. You're a coward. And for those of you who have followed my personal page, you know that I have said that for years before my return to the faith. I would not tolerate these playful, I would take my playful jabs at the Christian religion, but it always came from a place of respect. And I think most of my Christian friends on here will vouch for that. I'd be like, yeah, we don't mind that you took our holidays. Ha, ha, ha. That's a playful poke. Not, ha, 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 you guys are baby killers, and let's talk about the Crusades. It was never at it from that. But anytime people took the easy jab, and they were being cowards about it, I was the first one to call it out. And I think all of my Christian friends here, Sonny, if you're watching with Megan, feel free to, if you feel like I'm being dishonest right now, call me out on it. I would take my playful jabs, but when other people would pile on to Christians because it was easy and just because they were being weak and cowards, I was the first to call them out on it. This is not acceptable. You're not being edgy. You're a coward. And you're not the resistance. You are servile. You are absolutely servile. There is nothing edgy, and particularly when we're talking about wannabe edgy and cowardice, let's talk about the culturally acceptable things where we're going to make fun of Jesus now because of the pushback, right? They go out and they throw it out, and the minute somebody pushes back on it, oh, no, we weren't doing that. The Olympics, look, dude, again, I'm not going to do the crybaby thing. A lot of people, to me, I see them making fun of the Christian religion, and I laugh, right? I laugh because, A, it's like, let them have their moment, bro. I read the book, we win. That's first and foremost. But I also get to revel in their cowardice. I know what they're doing. And to me, it is amusing, especially when they get the pushback and go, oh, no, 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 we weren't doing that. We weren't doing that. Clearly, they were making fun of the Last Supper at the Olympics. Clearly, they were making fun of it. And while the event denied it, the choreographer came out and said, yeah, we were. Fast forward to this week, and Brother Dennis, I'm glad you brought this to my attention. Gretchen Whitmer. Now, there's about 100 perfectly good reasons to detest this woman. She's a control freak. She's a psychopath. She is, by any reasonable definition, a bitch. She used her emergency powers during COVID to lock everybody down while she went on big, extravagant vacations. She worked with the FBI to create a fake kidnapping plot. And if you really do a deep dive on that, there were more FBI agents than there were alleged kidnappers, which is why everyone but 2 or 3 who actually pled guilty and took a plea deal, everybody else was acquitted. Right? Same as, oh, wait, the Hutari militia, which also came out of what state? Michigan. Who's governor of Michigan? Yeah, that would be Gretchen Whitmer again. Right? She loves to play persecuted. This communion wafer thing with the Dorito. All right, first of all, what are we, 7? Are we 7, Gretchen? Is that what? Ooh, look how edgy I am, and we're giving the communion in a mock sexual way. And when somebody calls you on it, what do you? Oh, no, this is about a set of TikTok memes, and I'm just trying to reach out to a younger crowd. I don't doubt that you're trying to reach out to a younger crowd, Gretchen, in a very, very different sense. But once they push back, oh, no, because I think, fact check me on this. I think that Michigan is about, I want to say 18% Catholic. Somebody look that up for me, please. Michigan is about 18% Catholic. In a swing state, in an election this close, do you think that, I don't know, you think having the Catholic vote swing your way might be kind of helpful, especially when you're a de facto voice for the other cackling Jezebel? Yeah, might be an important thing. So when the pushback came, and yes, thank you, Joey. Yes, the word is dimitude. The word is dimitude. Thank you. And it's outright cowardice, right? You called them out back in 93 when, yes, Mike. And thank you for taking it way back. Yes. You ain't Rogan and we ain't your Jamie. Yeah, I think if somebody wants to fact check that real quick, I think Michigan's about 18% Catholic. So when you do something like this, when you're mocking the Eucharist, bro, you're mocking the Eucharist. Before my return to the faith, look, I know a mockery of the Eucharist when I see one, because that was part of naughty time play for me back in my degenerate days. All right. So don't tell me you're not mocking the Eucharist. You're mocking the effing Eucharist, girl. What would be a female Sparky? I don't know. Find something. But yeah, she got caught and she got played, and the pushback came. And what happened? She immediately cratered. Oh no, we're not doing that. Oh no, we're not doing that. I guess the point that I'm trying to make is this: push back. Don't be a crybaby about it. If you say Merry Christmas and somebody says Happy Holidays, you're not a persecuted Christian. Sit down and shut up, man. Pick your battles, bro. Pick your battles. Somebody says, you say Merry Christmas, somebody says Happy Holidays, or Happy Kwanzaa, or Happy Hanukkah, or whatever. You're not persecuted, all right? That's not a hill to die on. When people are making fun of your sacred rites, okay? Yeah, that's a time to maybe call them on it. That's a time to call them on it, right? You don't have to be, oh, look at us, we're persecuted. Gretchen Whitmer did a bad thing with a Dorito, and now it's just as bad as, Romania, and I feel like I'm in a gulag. You joke. Knock it off. You are targeted, certainly. They are bullying you, certainly. But being a crybaby about it is not the way. You push back. And you don't even have to be like, dude, you say that again, I'll kick your ass, because that's counterproductive as well. They make fun of it, you call them out. You call them out on it. It's like, oh yeah, that's neat. Like, yeah, making fun of the Eucharist, bro. Yeah, you're a real tough guy. You're a real tough guy. right? Here's a menorah. Let's see you do some improv comedy with that menorah. How about that? Since you're edgy and it's cool to pick on religions because all religions are stupid. Okay, here's a portrait of Muhammad. Here's a portrait of Muhammad. Go ahead, man. I mean, you're tough, right? You're edgy, right? You're tough. You're cutting edge. You're pushing back. You're speaking truth to power. The oppression of organized religion. Yeah, you're really pushing back, bro. Real tough guy. That's the way you. That's the way you address that. That's the way you address it. Call it out. Sonny did that several times with me when I took my playful jabs, right? In fact, one particular Easter, I don't remember the exact circumstances, but I do remember that I got some pushback from Sonny, right? And I owned it. Yeah, you're right. I'm being a jerk. I'm being a jerk. It wasn't intended as malicious, but you're right. I'm being a jerk. Good call. Push back. Push back. Two things that don't work: shutting up and crying. Those things don't work. Cry to the carpenter, cry to the boss man. For that flesh and blood that you're fighting in front of you right then, push back. Call them out for a coward. Call them out for a coward. They think themselves the resistance, but what they are, in fact, is the machine. That's how it's turned around. Every bit of it. The extreme left that at Berkeley fought for free speech in the 1960s is now trying to suppress it. We have New York Times editorials that talk about the dangers of free speech and how the entire Constitution needs to be rewritten. When people tell you who they are, believe them. Believe them. Okay? Because this has always been, even when they were, I'll sip a liquid enthusiasm here, even when they were the alleged downtrodden, oppressed minority, even when they were the ones who were up against it. And let's be real, man, in the 1960s, they had some legitimate grievances. The same FBI tactics that are being weaponized against abortion protesters now were that and worse being employed against the political left under J. Edgar Hoover and COINTELPRO, right? I, as someone who tries to be a man of principle, I slip. But as a man of principle, I look at COINTELPRO and I go, man, that is jacked up, bro. That's jacked up. That's jacked up. And a lot of innocent people got persecuted, and a lot of innocent people got put in prison, and a lot of innocent people got killed. That's really jacked up. And the hippies and the black power folks and everybody on the political left back then, the free speech activists at Berkeley, when they got shut down, when they got, beat up by police and things like that. Yeah, man, you're right, bro. That's really jacked up. Because I'm the principled guy saying, yeah, dude, that really is jacked up. Now that they're in control, they have no qualms whatsoever. Police can beat anyone they want as long as it's not a protected class. Oh, but wait, everybody's a protected class. Yeah, except if you doubt what I'm saying about protected classes, I want you to examine the case of Andy No, right? Andy No, right? Little Asian kid, little independent journalist, last name spelled NGO. You guys, some of you guys are already familiar with Andy No. If you're not, you should be. He has really been on the cutting edge of pushing back against the Antifa maggot mob in Portland and showing their connections to larger communist organizations and a whole lot of things like that. Now let's look at Andy No, the individual. Okay. He is about 5'3", maybe 5'4". He's Asian and he's gay. Okay. So here we have a small person, right? Not like dwarf small, but by man's stature. Let's give him 5'4". He's not like dwarf stature, but he's shorter than I am, and that should tell you something. Okay? He's 5'4", he's Asian, and he's gay. Now, I want you to imagine any other 5'4" Asian homosexual on the planet being ganged up on by 5 to 10 suburban, mostly college educated white guys and being beaten into a brain bleed. Beaten to the point where he had a brain bleed that had to be surgically addressed. You let that happen to any 5'4" Asian homosexual on the planet, at the hands of 5 white guys. Oh, but wait, we left out the important part. The white guys in question were leftist maggots, and the sawed off Asian homosexual in question was a conservative activist. Oh, well, that changes everything. This is the left. It's who they are. It's who they've always been. They were this way back in the 60s. The more honest of the communists, right? Rules for Radicals. Anybody read Rules for Radicals? Right. You look at Saul Alinsky and his work. You look at any of the representatives of the Revolutionary Communist Party. They were telling you up front, yeah, man, we're totally playing the victim thing until we get in control, and then we're going to change everything. This is the way leftist authoritarian systems have always worked. And I can tell you from personal experience, though somewhat limited, I was only on that walk for a couple of years, but I saw these chicken hawks and I saw how they worked. I took a hard political left, guys. You guys remember, and Roman knew me back in 92, man. Hard left, protesting outside the Republican National Convention in 1992, Houston, Texas. Got my head split by cops, got run down by cops on horseback. I was running with members of the Revolutionary Communist Party. I was running with members of La Resistencia. I was coffee buddies with the guy that instigated the Moody Park riots. We had coffee together. Yeah. I know what these people are about. I know what their principles are. I know what they train, and I know how they lie. They don't like me very much. Yeah, Roman, I love that. Yep, I remember some of your friends. This is what it's about. They are the machine now. And mocking Christianity is just as much a part of that. Because Jews are useful because of their financial and political power to institute change. I'm sorry, what ethnicity were the majority of the Bolsheviks during the revolution? I'm sorry, correct me if I'm wrong. Leon Trotsky, Lenin. Oh, what was that? The tiny hat people? Yeah. So they're useful, and they have always been involved in the Comintern, in the Communist International. They have always been at the root of that. Muslims are useful because they are the implement with which to destroy the West. Okay? Christians, on the other hand, real Christians who believe in the integrity and the importance of the West. Real Christians who are walking in the light of truth and who will stand for the kingdom. Do you want to know why Christians were so persecuted under communism? And let me stress again, this isn't crybaby time. Not yet. Not yet. Y'all don't know. Go back and watch that film I recommended for you the other week, Persecuted for Christ, right? Watch that film. Do it. Right now. Chop, chop. Do it. That's what persecution is. Being beaten across the feet with a wooden rod until you will never walk properly again for the rest of your natural life. Being deprived of food, being deprived of sleep, being intentionally frozen, being intentionally overheated, being intentionally piled on with stones, being tortured, having your fingernails and your teeth drug out. This is what Christians had to suffer under communism. So if you wonder why, as a faith, the real ones are kind of like, maybe BLM and like Marxist causes really aren't, no, they're really not cool. If you wonder why we might entertain that sentiment, read a history book or talk to any Russian citizen from the Soviet era. You know who I'm looking at. Or any guy with a whole lot of Romanian friends. You know who I'm looking at. Roman. Yeah, we're really not too hip on the idea, nor will we be, which is why we are being targeted, which is why the machine is going to target that, because faith in anything higher than the state, talking earlier in the opening about meaning, finding meaning in something outside of oneself, anything that gives it that higher meaning must be destroyed. Art that inspires a higher calling has to be destroyed and replaced with monstrosities like what we're seeing now. Cultural elements like theater has to be perverted in its message, has to be reduced to the lowest levels of degeneracy in its message, because anything that makes someone think of a higher calling or a higher meaning to life outside of themselves, anything but nihilism, gives people strength against authoritarian regimes. Nihilism must be the call of the day. If there is any higher calling outside of oneself, it is the state and only the state. That is the only thing that will be tolerated. That is your new God. That is your new religion. And most people are devout statists and don't even realize it yet, because they think themselves, they're resistant. We're pushing back. We're speaking truth to power. Real tough, man. Real edgy. That's why we make fun of Christians, because Christians are oppressors. And that's why we make fun of billionaires, because billionaires are oppressors. And we got to push back and we got to speak truth to power, because we're the resistance. Okay. Let me know how it works out for you, Sparky. What was the term? What was the term that the Bolsheviks had for that? Useful something. Useful. Another I word. Infantile? No, that wasn't it. Another I word. Useful something. Idiots. That would be it. Also, see also Kamala voters, but that's a rant for another time. So those were the bullet points that I wanted to cover. This is cowardice disguised as edginess, and it's servility disguised as resistance. I won't even say disguised, because these people think that they are genuinely the resistance. They think that they are speaking truth to power. They don't realize that they are the power. If your side has the support of every cultural institution, from media to academia to entertainment to corporate advertising to everything behind it, you are not the resistance, Sparky. Hate to be the one to break it to you. Those of us who are the true counterculture now, we're about to give you a reckoning. And when it is over with, there won't be any doubts anymore. We'll be able to clear it up for you. And we don't need the power of the state behind us to achieve that end. If we do have the power of the state behind us to achieve that end, God help your mortal souls. So, those are the bullet points. Now we are going to finish the program. We are going to finish the program with how we normally start, boys and girls. And let me go ahead and switch that banner out. We are going to close the program with, are you ready for it? Our popular segment known as Ryan's Rabbit Hole. Who's on board? Everybody? Is this the week that my applause sound effect ain't going to work? Am I Max Headroom? Guys, yeah, man. Appreciate you, fellas. Cool. Yeah, Ryan's Rabbit Hole, man. We're kicking it at you again. One more time for Ryan. Appreciate it. Ryan's Rabbit Hole, guys. It was our first additional segment and remains our most popular additional segment. And it dates all the way back to the early stages of my crane journey when Ryan and I were reunited up in Nebraska. And one of the things that Ryan and I bonded over early and still are very tightly bonded over is we were both repositories of useless information. We remember stuff that nobody else remembers. We think about stuff that nobody else really thinks about. We've read stuff that most other people haven't read. So every week, what the rabbit hole does is it takes you a little off the beaten path. Some weeks it dovetails with what we're talking about in the sermon. Some weeks it does not. But it's just a little poke into your bread oven to get you off that beaten path, to chase a little something down a rabbit hole that you weren't aware of before. Maybe it's a historical figure, historical event. Maybe it's a conspiracy theory. Maybe it's an urban legend that's a conspiracy theory that's 2 weeks away from becoming an accepted reality. Maybe it's an esoteric religious sect. Maybe it's the historical root of something that you took for granted was one way and it's another way. But in any case, what we are trying to do is take you out of the box to an event or a series of event or phenomena that you may not be either acquainted with at all, or you are less acquainted with than we feel like you ought to be. And for for this week's the first search term that I'm going to give you for Google, which you should not be using because you're going to, well, actually you should dip into Google, and now DuckDuckGo has been compromised, so you should dip into those two every now and then to see what the rest of the people are thinking, and then use something like Brave or some of the other open source search engines to dig a little deeper if you feel like it. But the Metcalf sniper attack. The Metcalf sniper attack is going to be your first, and this is going to lead me to some other things. So I'm going to take you down the first several steps of this particular rabbit hole, and it's going to take up the bulk of the next 20 to 30 minutes or so, and we're actually going to close with that because one thing led to another, and I was like, really, bro, we should really do a whole sermon on this. So you're going to get the better part of a sermon, and we may actually do some follow-ups if there's some elements that I don't touch on right now. What happened is that in mid-April of 2013, there was an attack that was carried out involving multiple gunmen on a PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric, for you non-Californians, and God bless you if you're still living in California. Vaya con Dios, my friend. I hate it for you. But in Coyote, California, which is near San Jose, a power transformer station came under high-powered rifle attack. These people were using 30 caliber rifles of allegedly or most likely, as it stands, because none of these people, none of the real perpetrators of this were ever caught or brought to justice. And another thing that PG&E and California and the mainstream media don't like to talk about is that people were killed in this assault. And later it came out that one of the planners, from the looks of it, from the investigation, may have been an insider, somebody that actually worked with PG&E. In any case, this transformer station came under high-powered rifle attack. There were multiple armed gunmen. We have no suspects. We have no one captured. We do have a body count that no one is talking about. And it was coordinated down to the wire. Started off about 1 o'clock a.m. Certain people lost their internet connections, right? Like a lot of high-level players in a lot of regions lost their internet connections. So this was a coordinated and staged attack. We cut the communications first. We jam radio communications to where the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Department can't really communicate using their radios. So their actual comms went down, and they opened up. And the rifles that were used were AK-47 variants, okay, best anyone can guess, because it was 7.62 by 39 shell casings that were found all over the place, which could indicate any number of things. All we know is that it was a deliberate terrorist attack on U.S. infrastructure in the state of California. A lot of facts have been left deliberately vague. The fact that it was coordinated almost military style, or by people who had some training in insurgency, counterinsurgency. Now, that could mean anything. That could mean elements of the U.S. military in a false flag operation. You could definitely make a case for that. The fact that it was AK-47 style rifles could mean that it was just a bunch of random lone wolf civilians acting alone. You believe that, don't you? We'd certainly make a case for it. The other thing that it could indicate, because what do we know about 7.62 by 39 millimeter as a caliber? It is the preferred rifle caliber of what? Communist bloc countries. Now, of course, the Democrats right now will tell you, well, that means it was the Russians acting with white supremacists in the United States. No. There's another bloc country that I'm thinking of that also uses AK rifles and 7.62 by 39. And in fact, they have a company called Norinco that manufactured a neat little bullpup rifle in 7.62 by 39. That would be the Norinco M86. Who am I talking about? You know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about the Chinese. So could it have been a Chinese sleeper cell doing a test run? Absolutely, it could have been. The fact is, we don't have any hard answers. All that we know were that a number of transformers went down, and in the process, even though it didn't totally disrupt the power coming out of that station, it disrupted enough of the power transmission coming from that station that they had to pull from other places in the surrounding area. They had to reroute the electricity. Now, we've got some redundancies, and it saved them from any major grid down malfunctions. First bank of transformers, and I'm quoting from a news article here, was riddled with bullet holes and leaked 52,000 gallons of overheated oil. It was that gave the law enforcement their first indication that the attack was even happening. 90 miles north, there was an equipment failure alarm, and that was not because the transformers had been punctured, but because of all the leaked and overheated oil. It took them 2 hours to establish a law enforcement response. By the time the cops got there, everybody had cleared out, and the only thing that they found were just rifle casings. That's it. $250,000 was offered in reward in 2013 when it happened. Nobody came forward. They still have no suspects. Now, that in and of itself would be bad enough. If you do that search, the media largely ignored the story. There were a couple of things that came out, and they started touching on it years after the actual event. If you do a search for the story, what you will find is the first thing that popped up on Google was attack on California power station raises terrorism fears. That article didn't come out until February of 2014, and that was NPR. CNN, boy, they're Johnny on the spot, as always. They didn't cover anything about it until 2015. Barely talked about it at all when it actually happened. Not too long after the NPR report in February, in April of 2014, the same exact facility got hit again. So, are we looking at military being trained for use against American civilian infrastructure in the event of a false flag attack or a government turnover? We could be. Are we looking at Chinese nationals or Chinese sleeper cells testing the security at U.S. infrastructure? Why not? You guys familiar with Dick Marcinko, former leader of SEAL Team 6, right? Red Cell. You read any of the Red Cell books? You read the fiction books, they're pretty fascinating. You read the actual account of the Red Cell operations, it's terrifying. They were able to get past the security at any number because Marcinko, being who he was, what they wanted him to do was go in and do a little operation, little poke and prod, and go, yeah, security's basically okay. We don't have to change anything. That's not Marcinko. Never was. May you rest in peace. He literally broke into U.S. naval bases with operatives from SEAL Team 6, seized control over 3 different bases, 1 nuclear submarine. Let me run that back for you again. 1 nuclear submarine, which is him and some SEAL Team 6 guys. And we're talking about the security operators were carrying live weapons. The Red Cell guys were not. That was part of the operation. They seized control of a nuclear submarine. They kidnapped multiple admirals. And that's at a naval base. Naval bases, plural. How secure do you think our electrical infrastructure is? So could it be U.S. Representatives of the regime training to institute a false flag? Yeah, it could. Could it be Chinese nationals? Well, let's make the case for that. Because as of the last 2 years, and anybody who's been following it with any degree of attention knows that malware and spyware has been pumped into U.S. grid infrastructure. We're talking gas pipelines. We're talking electrical. We're talking the entire electric grid, for that matter, as if the solar storms aren't enough of a thought to put us back into the dark ages. We're talking about malware and spyware that controls the entirety of U.S. energy infrastructure. We're talking electric. We're talking gas. We're talking the pipelines that carry the oil. We don't know how deep it is. We as civilians don't know how deep it goes. We know that it's deep and we know that it's dangerous because the DOJ came out and said that it was dangerous, and then the DOD said we're going to do a study. They did a deep dive study. The results of that study are classified. Only very limited and heavily redacted bits of that report have been released to the American public. And of course, they're assuring us that it's full transparency. We all know better. In the meantime, they're trying to distract us about all the things that they're disrupting about China's botnets. But if we look at the enormity and the entirety of this group of things, all of these circumstances coming together, and we look at the open border that has been left open as the result of a compromised president. These are all facts, by the way. I'm not going to entertain, you want to have that conversation. No, bro, you can't say. No, I'm saying it. I'm saying it as a statement of fact. Sit down, shut up, you're wrong. But as a result largely of a compromised regime, I won't say compromised president. Biden doesn't know what planet he's on, and Kamala's cackling when she hasn't got something down her neck. But the regime is certainly compromised. Obviously so. That southern border has been left open, and we know that for months in regions spanning from Arizona all the way over to California, they were intercepting more Chinese immigrants than they were Mexicans. Single military-age males. This has been going on for a long time. Do you think the media is not aware of that? They're certainly aware of it. Do you think the media is not aware of the malware and the spyware? They're certainly aware of it. Do you think the media isn't aware of the actual attacks on infrastructure? They're certainly aware of it. So why wouldn't they be reporting that? Seems like that would be sort of important. But back a few years ago, we had another set of attacks on the U.S. power grid. Okay, we're going to get past the sniper attacks. We're going to get past the Metcalf incident, but some things that happened here. Chinese transformers critical electric sector confirmed power grid attacks. They did start reporting on it back about this time last year, September of 2023. You guys remember hearing about it? They did report on that. What did the mainstream media say it was? What did Time magazine say it was last January? Mysterious attacks on power stations across the U.S. has rekindled fear of vulnerabilities about America's electricity infrastructure. Did anybody mention the Chinese? Did anybody mention the Chinese spyware or the malware that had already compromised those transformer stations? Not one word. Who was the new threat? Who was committing these acts? Come on, guys. You know it. It's a 3-word phrase. You already know it's a 3-word phrase. Who must be, even though we still don't have any suspects and we still don't have any arrests and we still don't have any captures, who is behind these horrible, dastardly attacks on U.S. infrastructure and American national security? Come on, guys. 3 words, starts with right. Right-wing extremists. You got it. Politico, extremists keep trying to trigger mass blackouts. Oh. And what better way for this compromised regime and its compromised propaganda ministry, who will never mention anything in a negative context about the Chinese. All of a sudden, a spyware or malware attack goes south, cripples the U.S. power grid, and we all return to the 1800s in a matter of seconds. Well, who do you blame? If you blame the people really responsible, to wit, the Chinese, then it's war, and the American people would demand it. If you blame, however, your political opponents, right-wing extremists here in the United States, probably Christians too, because, there's not too many right-wing extremists that aren't those MAGA Christians. I mean, I can tell you that most of the real right-wing extremists that I've met over the course of my life were straight up Asatru. But we're past that point of the discussion, aren't we? These are the headlines from when those attacks started happening again. And again, we have the entire background. We know that the Chinese have been planning deliberate attacks. And just this year, they finally acknowledged the malware attacks retroactively. Oh yeah, we know about the spyware and the malware. In fact, we've known about it for 4 years, and it's a terrible, terrible threat. Really? Then why weren't we hearing that, say, in September of 2023? Politico, extremists keep trying to trigger mass blackouts. Time, authorities fear extremists are targeting U.S. power grid. New York Times, August of this year. White supremacists trying to target energy grids. Council on Foreign Relations, cyber attack on U.S. power grid, right-wing extremists. CNN, February 2023, a vulnerable power grid is in the crosshairs of domestic terrorists. And on and on and on. Even the BBC got in on the act, March of 2023. How the U.S. power grid is a target for far-right groups. Can we do the math here? Do we have two brain cells to rub together? We know that the Chinese have spyware and malware designed to cripple the entire grid. We know it. Just this week, the DOD and the DOJ both acknowledged it. So we know that the Chinese have deliberately acted against the power grid with spyware and malware. We know that the Chinese have deliberately acted with malicious intent to cripple U.S. infrastructure. But if the blackouts start, who will they blame? Who will they blame, and what will be their response? If we are indeed dealing with fifth-generation warfare, and thank you, Doug, for showing up, and yes, we could talk for a very long time, and we will. We should have that conversation, most definitely. Who will they blame, and what will be their response? They know that it will be actors that their open border allowed to cross. They know that it will be an attack against the infrastructure that our known adversary, China, is behind. But that will mean one response, and that's not a response that a compromised regime bent on globalism can effectively execute. They will blame right-wing extremists. They will blame their political enemies. They will put the blame on us, and they will come down on us with the hand of God. Their God, anyway. Moloch, Baal, pick one. Moloch's the one they sacrifice the babies to, right? Yeah. In any case, that is your rabbit hole. That is your rabbit hole. Start, of course, with the sniper attack back in 2013 outside of San Jose, Santa Clara County. Start with that, but then go deeper. Attacks against U.S. infrastructure, Chinese malware in U.S. power grid, Chinese spyware in U.S. power grid, Chinese attacks against U.S. power grid. And even though you're searching, again, talk about how compromised it is. If you're searching on Google, even when you specifically enter Chinese attacks on U.S. power grid, it'll pull you up at least 3 results blaming it on right-wing extremists. This is where we are, people. No need to get down about it. Definitely need to get up about it. And when I mean up, I mean knuckles up. We are less than a month outside of what may be the last election in United States history, and certainly the most important. Yep, our naval shipyard locks as well, Mike. Yes, all of it. All of it. It's very, very deep. Start with that single attack and then sweep through. You will have a perspective on how big this thing is that all of your grazer neighbors will not have a clue. So when the grid goes down, you will know what happened. You will know who's responsible. And 2 things that I want you to look at with regard to a grid down, whether it comes from EMP weapons, whether it comes from an attack on the infrastructure, whether there are 2 things that I want you to have a look at, and then we're going to get up out of here because I got to get on to church. But that is your rabbit hole for the week. 2 that I want, attacks on infrastructure, spyware, malware, all of it. I want you guys to read the 1 Second After series. And in all honesty, full disclosure, I've only read the first one, guys. I got to be honest with you. I've only read the first one. 1 Second After will blow your effing mind. Now, that premise is on EMP weaponized attack, Grid Down, as is the following documentary, Grid Down Power Up with Dennis Quaid. Fantastic little documentary. It's a quick watch. It will keep you informed on just how bad it could get if the grid goes down. And again, the primary focus there is on weaponized EMP and our vulnerability to it. But if they can achieve it with spyware and malware, they'll do it just as easy. So you have adversaries of the United States looking to crush our power grid, and a regime that is compromised to those adversaries looking to blame their political enemies. What could go wrong? See you in the gulag. That's the focus. That's your rabbit hole, and that's how we're going to close. But we're going to close on an up note because we came in on an up note, especially for those of us up there who do see a higher purpose to life outside of ourselves, right? Those of us who do see a higher purpose even within ourselves. If you're not walking in the light of truth or the truth of his light, if you're not walking in the faith, it's cool. But you know that nihilism is not the way. If there's no meaning and you seriously believe that, do the math. You don't. You don't seriously believe that, or you wouldn't have stuck with me this long. You know that there's a meaning out there. Now, those of us who are walking in the faith, we have that meaning with the boss man and the carpenter kid. Some of you guys that aren't walking in the faith, you'll find meaning. You'll find meaning. You'll find it in your families. You'll find it in your work. You'll find it in the things that you do that make life worthwhile, like putting your ass under some heavy iron, or beating a bag, or just going on a long bike ride, or watching a sunset. You'll find that meaning. You will find that meaning. And that meaning is what's going to carry you through. For guys like us, what gives us the meaning is also what's going to make us the worst enemy for what's coming. But you know what? Whether you're walking in the truth or not, if you can look at evil and call it evil, I will stand proudly, shoulder to shoulder with you on the day of the fight. I will bleed and die beside you. And when I meet my maker, when I talk to the boss man and the carpenter, I can't make any promises. I'll put in a good word for you. He didn't walk in the light, Lord, but he died righteously. Whether or not that counts for something, you got to take that up with the boss man and the carpenter yourself. Scripturally, it don't look good, brother. But I'll still stand and fight and bleed and die beside any one of you guys. If you just have the soul within yourself to call evil evil, that we will stand side by side together and fight for what is good, what is right, what is anchored in truth and light. I am the Reverend, and that is the gospel. Close with a short prayer, and then I got to get on to church, boys and girls. Lord God, I appreciate every one of you guys, every one of these guys that have shared this moment with me. I appreciate the calling that you have that's bringing me back to church tonight so I can catch the back half of what Pastor had to offer, man. I know there's something for me there. I know there's something out there for each and every one of these guys right here. I ask that you help them to find their sense of meaning and their strength. If they can find it in you, Lord, if they can find it in you, then bless them, man. Bless them to that end. If they're looking to find it in you, pull the scales from their eyes and open their hearts and their minds, Lord. Let them find their way home. My knucklehead ass took a long time getting here too, Lord, and I sympathize with these guys. I really do. But I ask, just give them a little nudge, man. Give them a little nudge, because most of these guys are not as hard-headed as I was, Lord. Guide them home. Guide them home. Show them the light of your truth and the truth of your light, Lord. Let them walk in it. Let them walk in it. But in any case, let them find the steel in their spines for the fight that we have ahead, and face it the same way we face everything else. If we are true to you, and if we are true to our faith, and even if we are true to ourselves, we face it the same way we face everything else, unbowed, unbroken, and unafraid. I pray these things in the name of the risen Christ, whose blood bought my redemption and whom I ever serve. Amen. Appreciate you guys being here, man. I really, really do. Thank you. We're going to go out pretty quick because I got to get out the door and hustle my butt on back to church. But man, I really do appreciate you guys being here. I do. I appreciate all y'all. I'll pass that collection plate around. You guys already know I'm on Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, Facebook Pay, all that kind of stuff. Pass that little collection plate around. If you guys want to drop me some coin, that's beautiful. If you can't, because we're still in a Biden-Harris economy for another few weeks, that's cool. I get it. But spread the word about the show, man, and at least spread the message. If something I said touched you, spread that idea, man. Even if you're not going to turn them on to my program because I'm not the flavor, get the idea. Because it's the idea that carries, man. It's that truth that we're all fundamentally suckers for that carries today. And remember, guys, the thing you can do for me, but mostly for yourselves. Stone, what do we do, baby? Live the three. Hashtag live the three, y'all. What are you talking about? Live the three. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the three prime directives, people. They'll try to bury you with the noise. You've got to be the signal that breaks through the noise. They'll try to crush you with the darkness, emasculate you, demoralize you, dehumanize you with that darkness. You have got to be that light that reaches through the darkness, which leads you to the iron rule, the prime directive. You have got to be strength in a world full of weakness. Not just here, but here, sometimes even here. Why? Because without strength, none of the rest of it matters. Without strength, you won't have the punch to get that signal through the noise. Without strength, you won't have the tenacity to carry that light through the darkness and punch it straight through to the other side. So work on that strength, man. Strength above all. And when you pray, man, strength, clarity, and discernment always. Strength, clarity, and discernment always, because the father of lies is out there and he'll try to trip you up. That clarity and discernment will keep you focused on the path, and that strength will carry you through to stay on that path. Boss Man's got the plan. Carpenter's got your back, and I'm here for you too, man. I love you guys. God bless each and every one of y'all for being here. I appreciate you. Thank God for all of y'all, man. Be blessed. Forward, strength, truth, and light, people. God bless. I am the Reverend. That is the gospel. We'll see you next Sunday. I never got around to that announcement. Oops.